I've lived in New York long enough to know the rules. You don't run for trains unless you absolutely have to. You don't sit in empty subway cars. And if something feels off, you trust that feeling, even if you can't explain it. That's why this still bothers me, because I ignored that feeling over and over. This happened last winter. I was heading home from work late. Nothing unusual. I work in Midtown and live uptown, so my commute is basically muscle memory at this point. Headphones in, hood up, eyes forward. It was around 11:40 p.m. when I got down to the platform. The train was delayed. Again, I checked the board. Next train, 9 minutes. Annoying, but normal. The platform wasn't empty, but it wasn't crowded either. Maybe a dozen people spread out, everyone minding their own business. That's when I noticed the man standing at the far end. He wasn't doing anything strange. That's the thing. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't staring. He wasn't talking to himself. He was just standing there, perfectly still, facing the tunnel. At first, I assumed he was just waiting like everyone else. But after a few minutes, I realized he hadn't moved at all. Not to check his phone, not to shift his weight, not even that subtle sway people do when they're standing too long. I tried not to look at him again. When the train finally pulled in, I got on the middle car. It wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. I grabbed a pole and settled in. The doors closed. And right before the train started moving, the man stepped on. Same car. He stood directly across from me. I told myself I was being paranoid. New York is full of weird coincidences. People get on the same car all the time. But then I noticed his reflection in the window. He wasn't holding on to anything. The train lurched forward, and everyone swayed slightly. Everyone except him. He stayed completely upright, like the motion didn't affect him at all. I looked away. 2 stops later, half the car got off. The space around us opened up. I shifted down the pole a bit, creating distance. He shifted too. Same distance. Same position. I got off 3 stops early. I didn't even think about it. My body just decided. I stepped onto the platform, heart beating faster than it should have. The doors closed behind me. Then, a second later, they opened again. He stepped off. That's when I really got scared. I walked fast, heading toward the stairs. I didn't look back, but I could hear his footsteps behind me, not rushing, not dragging, matching my pace exactly. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he lived near me. Maybe he just happened to get off here too. I took the stairs 2 at a time. So did he. At the top, I pushed through the turnstile and went straight out onto the street. Cold air hit my face, and I felt a wave of relief seeing cars, streetlights, actual life. I slowed down. The footsteps stopped. I glanced back. No one. I laughed quietly, embarrassed with myself. My nerves were fried. That was all. I started walking home. I was halfway down the block when I noticed my reflection in a parked car. And behind me, reflected faintly in the dark window, was him, walking several steps back. I stopped. He stopped. I turned around fully. He stood there, hands at his sides, looking straight at me. Up close, he looked normal, middle-aged, plain coat, no expression at all. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed instead of terrified. He didn't answer. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was listening for something I couldn't hear. Then he said very calmly, "You weren't supposed to get off yet." My stomach dropped. "What?" I said, frightened. He blinked once, then smiled like he'd made a mistake. "Sorry," he said. "Wrong person." And he turned and walked away. I stood there for a full minute, frozen, watching him disappear down the block. I didn't follow. I didn't run. I just went home and locked my door and tried to forget about it. For a while, I did. Until about a week later, when I was back on the subway, same line, same time of night. The train slowed between stations. The lights flickered. And over the intercom, through the static, a voice came on. Not the conductor, not automated, just a man speaking calmly. Next stop, the voice said, is where you get off. I felt my phone buzz. A notification, no sender. Just a message that said, this time, don't change your routine. I got off at the next station. I took a cab home. I still take the subway every day, but I never wear headphones anymore. And if someone stands too still on the platform, I leave, because I don't think he was following me. I think I interrupted something, and I don't know what happens to the people who follow along. I moved into my first real apartment in Queens because it was cheap and close to the subway. The landlord called it a garden unit, which was a nice way of saying half the apartment was underground. The windows were narrow, just above sidewalk level. From inside, all you could really see were people's shoes, passing dogs, the occasional trash bag. I worked late nights, so most of my life happened after dark. By the time I got home, the street was quiet, except for distant sirens and the rumble of the train. The first night I noticed it, I thought it was just exhaustion. Someone stopped outside my window. I was sitting on my couch, lights on, eating noodles when a pair of shoes appeared in front of the glass. Black sneakers, mud on the soles. They didn't move. I waited a few seconds, expecting them to pass. They didn't. I leaned closer to the window. From that angle, I should have seen knees, maybe a shadow of a body. There was nothing, just shoes. After about a minute, they stepped away. I laughed it off. Someone tying their laces, checking their phone, New York stuff. The next night, it happened again. Same shoes, same spot. This time, the lights in my apartment were off. I was sitting in the dark, watching TV with the volume low. The shoes stopped outside the window and stayed. I held my breath. Slowly, the screen on my TV reflected the glass. In that reflection, I could see something I couldn't from my angle directly. Above the shoes, there was no body, no legs, nothing connected to them. Just two shoes standing perfectly upright on the sidewalk. My chest tightened. I muted the TV. The street was silent. Then the shoes took a step closer to the glass. Right up to it. Something tapped on the window. Not a knock. A fingernail. I scrambled up and turned on every light in the apartment. When I looked again, the sidewalk was empty. No shoes, no footsteps, no sound. The third night, I didn't turn the lights off at all. I stayed on the couch, staring at the window like it might blink. Around 3 a.m., the shoes appeared again. Same place. This time, they were wet, darkened like they'd been standing in something deeper than rain. They didn't tap. They didn't move. They just stood there. Minutes passed, and a voice spoke, muffled by the glass. Wrong apartment. I froze. The voice was calm, flat, male. I keep getting this wrong, it said. The shoes shuffled slightly, as if adjusting their stance. I smell the light, the voice added. My stomach dropped. I'll try again tomorrow. The shoes stepped away. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I asked my upstairs neighbor if anyone ever stood outside my window at night. She looked confused. There is no sidewalk in front of your window, she said. That space was filled in years ago. I didn't understand until she took me outside. The street in front of my apartment dipped slightly, where the old sidewalk used to be. The building had been extended outward decades ago. My window looked onto solid concrete. No space for anyone to stand. No space for shoes. I moved out that week. The landlord didn't argue. He didn't ask why. As I was loading my last box into a cab, I glanced at the old window one more time. Pressed against the inside of the glass, perfectly aligned where my feet had always been when I sat on the couch, were two wet footprints, facing inward. I've lived in New York my entire life. Born here, raised here, survived here. I know the city's rhythms, its noises, the way danger usually announces itself before it arrives. This didn't. I was working overnight security for a luxury apartment building in Midtown. Nothing glamorous. Sit at a desk, watch cameras, sign in late residents, call maintenance if something broke. Most nights were boring enough to blur together. The building had 27 floors, 4 elevators. One service elevator in the back that residents weren't supposed to use. That detail matters. Around 2:40 a.m., the lobby was empty. Rain streaked down the glass doors, traffic humming faintly outside. I was half listening to a podcast when one of the monitors changed. Service elevator camera. The doors were open. That wasn't unusual by itself. Cleaning crews used it sometimes. But the elevator was stopped on floor 0. There is no floor 0. Our building goes from the lobby straight to floor number 1. Basement levels are labeled B1 and B2. Floor 0 doesn't exist on any blueprint I'd ever seen. I leaned closer to the screen. The elevator interior looked off. The walls were darker than usual. Not dirty. Darker, like the lighting inside wasn't reaching the corners. The camera angle showed the back wall and part of the floor. And standing inside was a man. He was facing away from the camera, toward the elevator doors. Tall, very still, wearing what looked like a heavy coat, even though it was late spring. I checked the time stamp. Live feed. I radioed the overnight concierge upstairs. "Hey, you got anyone using the service elevator right now?" A pause. "Nope, just me on 7. I looked back at the screen. The man hadn't moved. No shifting, no weight change. Just waiting. I told myself he was probably maintenance, or someone lost. Weird floor label, sure, but systems glitch. Then the elevator doors started to close. Slowly, but instead of shutting completely, they stopped halfway, like something was blocking them. The man stepped forward. That's when I noticed his reflection. The steel doors reflected the lobby camera faintly, and in that reflection, I could see his face. It wasn't facing the doors. It was facing the camera. I felt my stomach drop. His body stayed pointed forward, but his head was turned impossibly far, chin over shoulder, eyes locked straight into the lens. He smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just enough to show he knew I was watching. The elevator doors snapped shut. The monitor flickered. The floor indicator on the elevator panel changed. Floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. It was coming up. I stood so fast my chair tipped over. I grabbed the radio. "Someone's in the service elevator. Do not take it. Lock yourself in." Static. Then the elevator dinged. Lobby. I stared at the doors across the lobby. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I could hear the cables humming inside the walls. The service elevator doors didn't open. They stayed closed. Seconds passed. Then the regular elevator doors opened instead. Empty. I let out a shaky breath, laughing under it. Of course. Glitch. Stress. Too much caffeine. That's when I heard footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Heavy. Wet, like someone had walked in from the rain. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. A voice spoke close to my ear. "You forgot to log me in." It sounded human. Normal. Annoyed, even. I slowly turned. The lobby was empty. No footprints. No water. No one behind the desk. I checked the cameras again. Every feed was normal, except one. The service elevator camera. The doors were open again. Empty, but carved into the back wall, deep enough to bend the metal, were words scratched over and over, uneven and frantic. This is still New York. I quit that job the next day. The building management told me the service elevator had been decommissioned years ago. They said the camera I described had been removed after an incident. When I asked what incident, they told me there was no record of anyone ever working my shift before me. Now, whenever I ride the subway late at night, I avoid the last car. Because sometimes, when the train stops between stations, I hear footsteps in the tunnel, and a voice behind me saying, "You forgot to log me in." I used to take the R train home after my bartending shifts in Brooklyn. It was cheap, it ran late, and most nights it was empty enough that I could sit wherever I wanted and decompress. One night, just after 1 a.m., I got on at Bay Ridge. There were only 3 other people in the car. A couple asleep at one end, and a man standing by the doors at the other. He was facing the map, not moving. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he didn't get off. Not at 77th, not at 59th, not even at Atlantic. At first, I assumed he was zoning out. Then I noticed he wasn't holding on to anything. No pole, no strap. The train swayed, lurched, stopped suddenly. The man did not move at all, not even a stumble. At DeKalb, the couple got off. Now it was just me and him. I switched seats, mostly to see if he'd react. He didn't, but the reflection in the window did. When the tunnel lights flashed, I saw his face for half a second. His eyes were open, too open, and his mouth was slightly parted, like he was mid-breath, except his chest wasn't rising. I told myself I was tired. At Canal Street, the doors opened, and a gust of air rushed through the car. His coat moved. He didn't. The train pulled out again. That's when the smell hit. Rotten, sweet, chemical. I stood up. The man's reflection didn't stand with me. It stayed where it was, like the window was remembering him. I walked toward the next car. As I passed him, I saw his hands. They were gray. Not pale, but gray. Like wax. And they were stiff, fingers slightly curled, frozen. The doors between cars were locked. Of course they were. The intercom crackled. "Attention passengers," the conductor said, voice flat. "Please remain calm." I laughed, just once, sharp and nervous. Then the train slowed. Not for a station. It stopped in the tunnel. The lights dimmed. Emergency lighting flicked on. In the quiet, I heard something soft. A wet sound. I turned. The man had moved, just a little. His head was tilted now, toward me. His mouth was open wider, and something dark was leaking down his coat. The intercom crackled again. "Ma'am," the conductor said, "please move to the front of the car." I screamed, "He's dead." There was a long pause. Then, "We know." The lights came back on. The train lurched forward. The man collapsed, hit the floor like a dropped mannequin. No reaction from the system, no alarms, no rush. At the next station, 2 transit workers got on, lifted him, and carried him out like this wasn't the first time. One of them looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. He hesitated. "Listen," he said quietly. "If you ever see someone standing that still again," he glanced down the tunnel, "don't wait to find out why they are." The doors closed. As the train pulled away, I looked at the window. For just a second, his reflection was still there, standing still. I work nights logging the dead. Not as a doctor, not a cop. I'm the last desk before people stop being people. Midtown, city-owned building, fluorescent lights that never turn off. My job is simple. Intake, catalog, tag. Names if we have them. Numbers if we don't. Most of them don't. The bodies come in zipped bags, black and heavy, stacked like trash until someone gets to them. Overdoses, falls, unknown, male, unknown female, sometimes just parts. The city has a smell down here. Bleach, rot, and something metallic that never quite goes away. I was fine with it at first. Detached. Professional. That changed when I started recognizing them. The first time, I told myself it was coincidence. A man came in tagged, unclaimed, John Doe. Approximate age, 40. Face gray. Lips split, eyes half open, like he'd been interrupted mid-thought. As I unzipped the bag to confirm features, my stomach tightened. I'd seen him before, not personally. On the street near my apartment. Always sitting on the same milk crate. Always humming to himself. I'd passed him dozens of times. Never spoke. Never learned his name. I checked the paperwork again. No name, no ID, no next of kin. I zipped him back up and logged the number. That night, I dreamed of humming. After that, it accelerated. A woman with frostbitten hands. She'd slept in the ATM vestibule near my bodega. A teenager pulled from the river. Same kid who used to sell candy bars on the train platforms. A man with cirrhosis, so bad his skin looked yellowed and stretched. He used to scream at traffic on 8th Avenue. Every one of them unclaimed. Every one of them someone I'd seen, not helped, not acknowledged, just passed. I started checking the intake dates. Most had been dead for days before anyone noticed. Some longer. The city didn't hurry for them. No one ever does. Then one came in with my address written in the effects log. I laughed when I saw it. Nervous reflex. Found near residence, the form said. The body was bloated, face distorted, eyes collapsed inward. But the jacket, it was the same jacket I wore every winter. Same tear near the pocket. Same cheap zipper. I told my supervisor. He barely looked up. Clothes get donated. Stuff circulates, he said. Don't personalize it. I tried not to. But the bodies started arriving cleaner. No street filth. No grime. Just me-shaped. My height. My build. Same scar on the left forearm from when I was a kid. Still unclaimed. Still numbered. I started seeing them before they arrived. Walking past my desk at night. Sitting on the gurney bays. Standing behind me in the stainless steel reflections. Not distorted, not monstrous. Just empty. Waiting. One night, I finally checked a toe tag I wasn't supposed to. Cause of death. Neglect. That wasn't a real cause. Not officially. But it was typed there anyway. The next body had the same cause. And the next. I realized something then. This wasn't about dying. It was about disappearing. The city doesn't kill you all at once. It erodes you, starves you of notice, files you down until no one can say your name without effort. And when no one remembers you clearly enough, when you exist only as background noise, you become unclaimable. That's when the city takes the rest. Last night, my badge didn't work at the entrance. Security waved me through anyway. You're already checked in, he said. Inside, my desk was occupied. Someone was sitting there, typing steadily, logging numbers, not looking up. He was wearing my jacket. On the gurney beside him was a black bag, fresh tag, still warm. I read it upside down. Unclaimed, unknown male. Approximate age, not applicable. Cause of death hadn't been filled in yet. I understand now why no one ever screams down here. By the time you arrive, the city has already made sure no one is listening. And soon, no one will remember there was ever someone who should have been. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like these. And remember, stories are just echoes. What you hear depends on how closely you listen.